So I'm going to describe to you here the difference between citizen of the United States and United States citizen, and how that attaches to either executive or commander-in-chief. So let's start with Title V. Title V is for the administration or the governing of civilian employees, because employees are not military and military are not employees. So there's a difference between military and employees. Employees comes under the United States executive, which is the president's powers as the executive officer of the United States of America. So this is a civilian position. He's put in a position of being a civilian, but also a military, because he has to be able to sign executive orders ordering civilians, but the civilians are the people of Title V, which are the employees. The employees of the United States of America, not the United States. Employees work as civil servants into the civil service in the executive branch. They are civilians. They are non-combatants. We see the definition non-combatant in the Latin dictionary under the word ostiosus. You can look it up for yourself. It's probably in any Latin dictionary. At leisure, unoccupied, disengaged, unemployed, idle. This is the definition of ostiosus, but non-combatants, civilians. Non-combatants are civilians. Civilians are private citizens, but they can be employees working for the federal government under Title V. Okay, civil servants. But because the Constitution creates a military, and then they hire civilians to aid in the military functions, the civilians are United States citizens under the executive powers, Article 2, Section 1. Now it says here something that's a little bit confusing. I went over this section the other day, and what it says is Section 1, a United States citizen. Okay, it doesn't say a citizen of the United States. In the Constitution, the founders created a government of representatives who are military, and being in the military, they are called citizen of the United States, not a United States citizen. A United States citizen, because this is Title V, employees are civilians who are working for the government, and when they work for the government, they're United States citizen, who's a family member of a federal civilian employee of a non-appropriated fund employee. So I'm going to help you understand this. Okay, so you have to understand what a non-appropriated fund instrumentality is, and the fact that they have civilian employees. So working for MWR, an example, is a nonprofit organization working to help the military. So for example, the Navy Army Federal Credit Union, or the Navy Federal Credit Union, is a nonprofit bank. It gets money from its members. It doesn't get money from Congress. When when it's a nonprofit organization working under the money that it generates itself, it's called a non-appropriated fund instrumentality. Those banks, the Navy Federal Credit Union and the Navy Army Federal Credit Union, pay their employees on their own. They generate income on their own. They don't get money from Congress. And they do this as a nonprofit organization to help federal employees, federal people, have a banking system. Another one is MWR, which is Morale, Welfare, and Recreation. For example, they have child care centers set up on military posts. Those child care centers do not get money appropriated from Congress. They are nonprofit organizations. They pay for everything on their own. They do business with the federal government. They're registered with the federal government as an instrumentality, a non-appropriated fund instrumentality. They follow all the federal rules and regulations. They are federal civilian employees working on federal lands. These non-appropriated fund employees that work for MWR, for the banks, commissaries, exchanges, the golf courses on post, and all these other things on post that the Constitution doesn't allow the federal government to appropriate funds for. They have created organizations, nonprofit organizations. So what that is saying is some non-military person, a civilian, working on a military post as an employee, such as at the bank, of a non-appropriated fund instrument, a bank or MWR or the golf course, these nonprofit organizations. A nonprofit organization providing a service to those on a military post, who, when these people, nonprofit employees, is a family member of a employee under Title V. So if I am a civilian employee working with the military under the executive power as a civil servant, getting paid appropriated funds because my job is essential to the mission of the military, if I have a spouse who wants a job on post, then they can get a priority in hiring. And I think this particular section was in reference to families who are sent overseas. So civilians are sometimes sent overseas, and because their spouse has no say-so in the matter, the spouse has priority in getting hired on post through one of these nonprofit organizations. This is one of the things that the nonprofit organizations agree to when they agree to do business and the government accepts them doing business on federal lands. Or a family member of a uniformed service. So now you have a civilian who's a United States citizen under Title V, employee under the executive, Article 2, Section 2, or a family member of a uniformed service person who's a citizen of the United States under Title 10, Armed Forces, under Article 2, Section 2, Commander-in-Chief. Their spouses also can get priority in being hired on the federal lands by one of the nonprofit organizations. They can also, if they meet the qualifications, become an employee. So if you have a military member who's sent overseas, or even in the States, in this case of a military member, has a spouse who meets the qualifications of a position being announced on usajobs.gov, of a position being announced for United States citizens to become a Title V employee, then they could get priority for these positions. Veterans also get priorities for these positions. So the spouse of a person, an employee, a civilian working as a civil servant called United States citizen, gets sent overseas. Their spouse can get priority working as a nonprofit organization, non-appropriated fund employee of working with the government, and one of the instrumentalities. And the military member whose spouse meets the qualifications can get hired either as an employee, which is appropriated fund, or part of the organization, the non-appropriated fund. So these two are for appropriated funds because they're called critical or mission essential. Their money for their pay is appropriated through Congress. These other things, such as the child daycare center, the golf course, the bars or clubs, the food court, the cafes, anything not in the Constitution, but is something that the military likes to have, they're called non-appropriated fund, and they're organized as nonprofit organizations working on federal lands with military, their dependents, like their kids. Their kids get to go hang out at the bowling alleys and stuff, and the theaters, and play video games. They have these rooms set up where they can do all that. They get to go to the golf course and they get discounts. And these people can also use their services. And when these people are overseas, their spouses get to use these services. Okay? So Title 10, Title 10 is under Article 2, Section 2, Commander-in-Chief. Okay, because they're armed forces, so they're under the military command, the president's office as a military commander. So it says in here it uses executive as the designation for the civilians working with the military. So part of definitions is to specify to the military, because the military would be reading this, specify to the military that when it says executive, it means the civilians, and it's a little bit ambiguous. Such term means the executive part of the department. So the civilian part of the department. Executive part of the department means the executive part of the Department of Defense. So let's read that again. The civilian part of the department means the civilian part of the Department of Defense, or the executive part. Under Article 2, Section 1, President is the executive over the civilians. In Article 2, Section 2, he's the Commander-in-Chief of the military. The term military department means the Department of Army, Navy, and Air Force. The military has civilians that work with it. They designate this by United States citizen. And this is citizen of the United States. The term service acquisition executive means the civilian official within a military department. So the executive in a department, in a military department, means the civilian official, not officer, official. So it's telling the military, when it says executive, it's meaning the civilian person in that department. And civilians are Title V people, okay, Title V employees, civil servants, and they are United States citizens And they are under the Article 2, Section 1, Executive Office of the President of the United States of America. The military, Title 10, are under the Article 2, Section 2, Commander-in-Chief of the United States Land and Naval Forces. So Article 2, Section 1 is for the civilians, the regulating of the civilians on military posts working for the federal government, not all people, not all civilians everywhere, all over the country and all the states. And Article 2, the president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and the militia when called into actual service of the United States. So here you have the Title 10 Armed Forces people. This is Title 10. Article 2, Section 2 is for Title 10 people. Title 10 people. Armed Forces. In the armed forces, you have civilians who are employees that are under the executive, who are Article 2, Section 1, under the executive. Title 5, employees, civil servants. Okay? So that's the designation between citizen of, or United States citizen, and citizen of the United States military under the commander-in-chief. Now, what does it say on here? Qualifications for representative. Citizens of the United States, not an inhabitant of the state. As well, that's the same as well for senators, except they have to have 9 years. Let's see. Citizenship just means you're a member of something. I can't remember if I vetted this or not. You can look it up. Iowa 1927, the term inhabitant is not synonymous with citizen, but not an inhabitant of the state. That's part of the requirements for the Constitution. Not an inhabitant of the state. So a citizen of the United States is someone who's been in the military for 7 years as to be qualified for a position as representative, and the senator 9 years to be qualified for the position of a senator. You have to have 9 years military experience as a citizen of the United States, capital C, citizen of the United States. Okay, so that's what that means. That's what those two designations are. You are neither, unless you work for the military, for the federal government as a military person, you are not a citizen of the United States. And if you are not an employee working for the civil service, you are not a United States citizen. So what are you? A citizen of the state? An inhabitant? A private citizen? A private civilian? I call myself private American civilian. Washington, when he left service, called himself a private citizen. Okay, so all these people claiming to have some sort of jurisdiction over you, some sort of authority over you, some sort of right to rule, regulate you, and they claim that they have the Constitution that gives them the power to do it. They're Full of crap.